Hi there, welcome to Dreamy Histories channel. Tonight, we're stepping into the perfumed halls of an Egyptian palace where the air hangs thick with frankincense and fear. You're about to experience life as a royal concubine in ancient Egypt, where your survival depends on perfect eyebrows and knowing exactly when to giggle at the pharaoh's jokes. Fair warning though, you probably won't make it past 30 without either being poisoned by a rival or dying from lead-based makeup. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what time it is there. Drop it in the comments below. Now, close your eyes and listen. The Nile mud squelches between your toes as rough hands shove you forward through the palace gates. You're 15, maybe 16. Nobody bothered to keep accurate records of a merchant's daughter, and you've just been sold to the royal harem for the price of 3 decent oxen. The limestone walls tower above you, carved with images of gods who look suspiciously like the current pharaoh, because apparently divine modesty isn't a thing in 1350 BCE. Your stomach churns as you're herded into a courtyard where 20 other girls wait, all wearing the same terrified expression you probably have plastered across your face. The afternoon sun beats down mercilessly, and you're already missing the relative comfort of your family's mud brick house. Sure, you had to share sleeping space with goats, but at least goats didn't plot your death over breakfast. Then she appears, the chief wife, dripping in gold and malice. Her wig alone probably weighs more than your entire body, styled in those elaborate braids that take 6 hours and 3 hairdressers to achieve. She glides toward your group with the kind of practiced grace that says she's been doing this for decades, sizing up fresh meat for the royal collection. "Look at you," she purrs, her kohl-rimmed eyes scanning the group like a hawk evaluating mice. Village girls who think they'll capture Pharaoh's heart with their rustic charm. She pauses at you, and her perfectly plucked eyebrow raises a fraction. This one still has all her teeth. How novel. The scribe beside her, a thin man who manages to look both bored and constipated simultaneously, starts scratching hieroglyphs onto his papyrus. You'll learn later he's recording your physical attributes for the palace inventory. Yes, inventory. You're now officially listed somewhere between the royal furniture and the sacred cats. Though honestly, the cats get better treatment. The chief wife continues her inspection, occasionally poking at someone's hip or examining their hair like she's purchasing melons at the market. "You'll be assigned rankings," she announces. "Royal ornaments, royal beauties, or," she pauses dramatically, "lesser attendants." The way she says that last category makes it clear you'd rather be reincarnated as a dung beetle. You're trying to stand straighter when she suddenly grabs your chin, tilting your face toward the light. Her breath smells like imported wine and cinnamon, luxuries you've only heard about in stories. Good bone structure, passable skin. We'll see if you survive the training. Survive? Nobody mentioned anything about survival when your father accepted those oxen. The hierarchy, as you'll soon discover, is more complex than any pyramid construction. At the top sits the great royal wife, currently Nefertiti, whose cheekbones could cut glass and whose political power could topple kingdoms. Below her, the secondary wives plot and scheme, followed by the royal ornaments who at least get to attend banquets. Royal beauties can occasionally warm the royal bed, while lesser attendants basically exist to hold mirrors and get blamed for everything. And then there's you, currently unranked, unnamed in the palace records, just girl number 12 from today's batch. Romantic, isn't it? The chief wife claps her hands, heavy gold bracelets clanging like temple bells. You'll be taken to the House of Beauty, try not to cry too loudly during the hair removal. It disturbs the sacred ibises. As guards escort your group toward a building that looks alarmingly like a torture facility with better decorations, you catch a glimpse of the royal gardens. Historians still debate whether Egyptian palaces really had those legendary hanging gardens, or if they've been confused with Babylon. But you can confirm there's definitely something hanging, though it might just be the previous batch of failed concubines. Kidding, probably. The House of Beauty looms before you, its entrance flanked by statues of Hathor, goddess of beauty and, rather ominously, destruction. Inside, you can hear screaming. The girl next to you, a baker's daughter with unfortunately prominent ears, starts to cry. "Save your tears," mutters an older concubine passing by. "You'll need them for tomorrow when they start on your eyebrows." The screaming gets louder as you're pushed through the doorway, and suddenly you understand why they call it the House of Beauty instead of what it really is, a grooming gulag where body hair goes to die. The air inside reeks of burning sugar and myrrh, mixed with something that might be fear sweat or just regular sweat, because Sweet Ra's sun chariot. It's hot in here. A woman who looks like she bench presses pyramid blocks for fun grabs your arm and steers you toward a marble slab. "Strip," she commands, already heating something in a pot that bubbles ominously. You comply because her biceps suggest resistance would be futile, and also because apparently modesty is another luxury you can't afford anymore. The morning routine, as she explains while literally ripping hair from your legs with boiling sugar paste, starts at dawn. First, you'll be awakened by the sacred temple bells, which is a fancy way of saying some priest bangs a metal disc until everyone's ears bleed. Then comes the bathing ritual in pools scented with lotus and natron salt, which sounds divine until you realize natron is basically the same stuff they use to mummify dead people. Nothing says fresh and clean like corpse preservative. Hold still. Bicep woman grunts as she approaches your nethers with hot wax, unless you want to explain to Pharaoh why you're lopsided down there. The beauty standards make modern Instagram filters look reasonable. Your body hair, all of it has to go. And we're not talking a quick shave with a razor. Oh no, that would be too easy. Egyptian concubines use a delightful mixture of sugar, honey, and pain. They heat it until it's approximately the temperature of molten bronze, slather it on your skin, then rip it off along with your will to live. The priests claim hairlessness brings you closer to the gods, but you're pretty sure the gods have better things to do than check your grooming habits. Next comes the skin treatment, and this is where things get properly weird. That gorgeous Egyptian glow everyone raves about. It comes from crocodile dung. Yes, you heard that right. Some enterprising beautician discovered that crocodile excrement, when mixed with honey and sour milk, makes an excellent face mask. You'd protest, but the woman applying it has arms like boat oars and a smile that suggests she enjoys her job a little too much. The alkaline properties promote cellular renewal, she explains, which is definitely not what she actually says, because nobody in ancient Egypt talks about alkaline properties. But it's something along those lines involving blessing of Sobek and sacred essence. All you know is that you're sitting there with reptile feces on your face, contemplating your life choices. The morning beautification, continues with nail care. Your fingernails and toenails are shaped with bronze files, then painted with henna in intricate patterns. The chief beautician insists that chipped polish is punishable by relegation to floor scrubbing duty, which wouldn't be so bad, except the floors are cleaned with vinegar and natron, and crawling around on your knees isn't great for maintaining that concubine mystique. But wait, there's more. Your hair. if you're lucky enough to keep it, gets washed in a delightful concoction of castor oil and dead mice. No, that's not a typo. Apparently, mouse remains prevent baldness, according to medical papyri that historians still puzzle over. If you're unlucky, they shave your head completely and fit you with a wig made from either human hair, expensive, or palm fibers, itchy. The wigs are styled with beeswax and perfumed with myrrh, which melts in the heat and drips down your neck like aromatic torture. The makeup application takes another 2 hours minimum. First comes the foundation, a paste made from chalk and lead that gives you that coveted deathly pallor look while slowly poisoning you. Historians still argue about whether ancient Egyptians knew lead was toxic or if they just really committed to beauty at any cost. Your eyes get the full treatment. Green malachite on the lids, black coal extending in dramatic wings, eyebrows plucked into perfect arches then redrawn with precision that would make a hieroglyph scribe jealous. "Stop flinching," snaps the makeup artist as she approaches your waterline with a coal stick that looks suspiciously sharp. You think Cleopatra became legendary by blinking. Actually, Cleopatra won't be born for another 1,000 years. But the point stands. Your lips get painted with red ochre mixed with animal fat, which tastes exactly as appetizing as it sounds. The final touch. A beauty mark made from ground beetles placed strategically on your cheek, because nothing says ravishing quite like insect carcasses on your face. By the time they're finished, you look like a completely different person. Gone is the merchant's daughter who helped tend goats and grind grain. In her place stands a glittering ornament, plucked and painted within an inch of her life. You catch your reflection in a polished bronze mirror and barely recognize yourself. Tomorrow, we start teeth whitening. Bicep woman announces cheerfully. Hope you like the taste of pumice powder and vinegar. As you're led to your quarters, a small cell with a reed mat and a pottery jar for necessities, you realize this is your life now. Every morning will begin with systematic hair removal and toxic cosmetics. Every evening will end with carefully removing it all, only to start again at dawn. You're basically a living, breathing decoration, maintained with the same obsessive care as the palace gold. At least the crocodile dung is fresh. Your first full day in the palace begins with you accidentally insulting Taweret, the hippo-headed goddess of childbirth. And it's really not your fault that you screamed when you saw her statue. In your defense, you turn a corner expecting maybe a nice painting of wheat fields. And instead, there's a pregnant hippopotamus with human hands and crocodile teeth grinning at you. Your shriek echoes through the limestone corridors like a confession of blasphemy. The head of palace protocol, a woman whose face suggests she's been sucking lemons since the Old Kingdom, materializes beside you instantly. Did you just scream at the divine protector of women? Her voice could freeze the Nile in flood season. I was startled. You stammer, which is apparently the wrong answer, because her face contorts into an expression that would make the Sphinx look friendly. Lesson 1, she hisses, grabbing your ear like you're a disobedient cat. Everything in this palace is sacred. Every statue, every painting, every suspiciously stained floor tile. You don't scream at them. You don't touch them. You certainly don't make faces at them, even if they're depicting Set in his more anatomically ambitious forms. The etiquette, lessons that follow, make military training look casual. You must walk with steps no longer than the length of your foot, which means you're basically shuffling everywhere like you've got advanced arthritis. Your eyes should remain lowered unless specifically commanded to look up, but not so low that you appear shifty. There's apparently a perfect angle, roughly 23 degrees below horizontal, that conveys both submission and alertness. When entering a room where anyone of higher rank resides, the protocol head drones. You must perform the gesture of greeting. She demonstrates something that looks like interpretive dance had a baby with a muscle cramp. Right hand to heart, left hand extended, bow from the waist while stepping backward with your left foot, then kneel while keeping your spine straight. You try it and immediately tangle your feet, crashing into a potted palm. The pot, probably worth more than your father's entire farm, wobbles dangerously. That plant, she says slowly, was a gift from the Nubian ambassadors. Sweet mother of Isis, the rules multiply like locusts in harvest season. You can't eat dates before noon because they're associated with fertility rituals. You can't wear blue on the third day of the week because it might offend Nut, the sky goddess. You absolutely cannot sneeze in the presence of cats, who are sacred to Bastet and apparently very sensitive about bodily functions. During your third etiquette lesson, you commit what might be a capital offense. You sit down without permission. The protocol head's gasp could suck all the air from the room. Did you just place your common posterior on a surface designated for the ornamental class? Historians still debate whether ancient Egyptian society was really this stratified or if power-drunk officials just enjoyed making up rules based on the vein throbbing in the protocol head's forehead. You're leaning toward the latter. The verbal restrictions are even worse. You must refer to yourself in the third person, but only using approved diminutives. This unworthy servant begs to use the lavatory, becomes your new bathroom request. The pharaoh is never he, but rather His Majesty's divine radiance, chosen of Ra, mighty bull of Memphis. And yes, you have to say all of it every single time, even if the palace is actively on fire. You're practicing the 17 different ways to say yes, each appropriate for different social situations, when disaster strikes again. A priestess of Isis enters the training room, and you perform what you think is the correct greeting. Unfortunately, you mix up the gesture for "I honor your divine connection" with the one for "I question your ritual purity." The room goes silent, the kind of silent that usually precedes someone being fed to crocodiles. The priestess's eyes narrow to slits. Did this creature just imply I'm spiritually contaminated? She's new, the protocol head says quickly, though she's already backing away from you like stupidity might be contagious. Fresh from the villages, still smells of goat. I don't smell a goat. You protest, which is definitely the wrong thing to focus on right now. The priestess circles you slowly, her leopard skin cloak rustling ominously. You've heard that Isis priestesses can curse your bloodline for 7 generations, though historians argue whether they actually believed they had this power or just enjoyed the dramatic effect. Either way, you're not eager to find out. Tell me, goat girl, she purrs, what happens to concubines who offend the gods? You genuinely don't know, but based on everyone's expressions, it's not a spa day. They serve in the temple of Set. The protocol head supplies helpfully. Set, for context, is the god of chaos, storms, and generally unpleasant things. His temple is located in the desert, where the sand gets so hot it can cook eggs, and where they definitely don't have crocodile dung facials. The priestess considers this, then laughs. It's not a comforting sound. She's too incompetent even for Set. He has standards. She sweeps toward the door, pausing just long enough to add, teach her the apology prostration, the full version, with the forehead bleeding. After she leaves, You learn that the apology prostration involves pressing your head to the ground so hard you leave a mark. By evening, you've memorized 43 different rules and forgotten your own name. You're not allowed to use it anyway. You're now Lotus Bud number 7, until you earn a proper palace name, if you ever do. The summons comes at midnight, delivered by a eunuch whose expression suggests he'd rather be anywhere else, possibly including the afterlife. His Majesty requests the presence of Lotus Bud number 7, he announces, and your stomach drops somewhere around your ankles. You've been preparing for this moment for 3 weeks, practicing on wooden training dolls that look disturbingly realistic except for their facial expressions, which seem permanently constipated. The Mistress of Intimate Arts, yes, that's her actual title, has drilled you in the 17 approved positions, the 23 acceptable sounds, and the mysterious art of gazing adoringly while thinking of the Nile's eternal flow. Remember, she'd said during yesterday's lesson, Pharaoh is a living god. You don't just pleasure a man, you're participating in the cosmic maintenance of Ma'at itself. Which sounds profound, until you realize you're essentially being told that bad bedroom performance could literally throw the universe out of balance. No pressure. You follow the eunuch through corridors lit by oil lamps that cast dancing shadows on walls decorated with some surprisingly explicit reliefs. Apparently, the ancient Egyptians believed in visual aids. Your feet, freshly henned in patterns that supposedly enhance fertility, pad silently on cool stone. You're wearing the prescribed outfit, a transparent linen sheath that leaves absolutely nothing to imagination, plus enough jewelry to stock a small treasury. The gold chains around your hips chime softly with each step, which the mistress assured you is audibly arousing. The Pharaoh's chamber doors are guarded by 2 soldiers who've perfected the art of looking at nothing while seeing everything. They don't even blink as you pass, though you're basically naked and jangling like a wind chime. Inside, the room smells of frankincense and male ego. The Pharaoh, Amenhotep III, if the palace gossip is accurate, reclines on a bed that could house a small village. He's older than you expected, with a belly that suggests he's been enjoying the offerings a bit too enthusiastically. The golden beard strapped to his chin looks heavy enough to cause neck strain. Approach, he commands, and your training kicks in. 7 steps forward, drop to knees, forehead to ground. Wait for permission to rise. So far, so good. You may look upon the divine countenance, he says, which is your cue to make eye contact. This is where everything goes wrong. Maybe it's nerves. Maybe it's the absurdity of the fake beard. Maybe it's the way he sprawled there like a beached river whale wearing enough gold to fund a small war. Whatever the reason, you giggle. Not a demure titter, not a charming laugh, a full-on snorting giggle that escapes before you can stop it. The silence that follows could suffocate a hippopotamus. Historians still debate whether ancient Egyptian pharaohs had any sense of humor about their divinity. But based on how his face is turning the color of papyrus dipped in pomegranate juice, this one definitely doesn't. Did you just, he struggles to find words, or laugh at the morning and evening star, the son of Ra, the living Horus? Your training said nothing about damage control for giggling fits. This humble vessel was merely overwhelmed by your Majesty's divine radiance. It comes out like a question, which doesn't help. He sits up, belly jiggling with indignation. Do you know what happens to concubines who mock the divine presence? You don't, but you're sensing a theme with these threat questions. They're sent to the granite quarries, he continues, where they can laugh at rocks all day. Very amusing rocks, hilarious rocks, Rocks that don't mind being giggled at because they're just rocks and not literal gods. The capitalization is implied by volume. You prostrate yourself again, this time with feeling. This worthless servant begs forgiveness. Your Majesty's glory simply overwhelmed her limited mortal comprehension, causing an involuntary vocalization of joy. He considers this. You can hear him breathing through his mouth, which isn't helping the divine mystique. Joy, he repeats flatly. Ecstatic joy. You elaborate desperately. The kind that mortals experience when confronted with the incomprehensible magnificence of stop talking. You stop. Minutes pass. You're starting to lose feeling in your knees when he finally speaks again. Rise. You stand, keeping your eyes appropriately downcast, though you can see he's adjusted his beard, which now sits slightly crooked. This observation threatens to trigger another giggle, so you bite your tongue hard enough to taste copper. Perhaps, he muses, the gods have sent me a fool instead of a concubine. Tell me, Lotus Bud number 7, can you juggle? This isn't in any of the training. No, Your Majesty. Can you tell jokes? Not intentionally, Your Majesty. Yet you laugh at gods. He strokes his fake beard thoughtfully. Curious. What follows is possibly the strangest night in the history of royal seduction. Instead of the 17 positions, you spend hours sitting at the foot of his bed while he regales you with his military victories, each one more embellished than the last. By the time he gets to the Battle of Kadesh, which won't actually happen for another century, but historical accuracy isn't his strong suit. He's claiming he personally slew 300 enemies with his divine sneeze. And then, he continues, warming to his theme, I transformed into a golden falcon and pecked out their eyes. You nod solemnly. How efficient of Your Majesty. Dawn approaches before he finally dismisses you, having never laid a divine finger on you. As you shuffle toward the door, he calls out, Lotus Bud number 7. Yes, Your Majesty. Next time, try to contain your joy. You're halfway back to your quarters before you realize you've just been scheduled for a next time, which means you're either very lucky or very doomed. The other concubines stare as you return, clearly expecting you to look more disheveled and less confused. How was it? Whispers a girl from Memphis. You consider your response. Educational? The mistress of intimate arts later informs you that you've set a palace record for most unusual first encounter. She's not sure whether to punish you or study you. In the end, she assigns you remedial training in suppressing inappropriate emotional responses, which mostly involves staring at increasingly ridiculous paintings of the pharaoh while maintaining a straight face. You fail spectacularly. The poisoned cosmetics arrive disguised as a gift from an admirer, which should have been your first clue because nobody in the palace admires anyone. They just tolerate each other with varying degrees of homicidal intent. The box is pretty though, inlaid with lapis lazuli and mother of pearl, the kind of craftsmanship that screams, I'm definitely not trying to kill you. Please put this on your face immediately. Your newfound notoriety as the giggling concubine has made you a target. Apparently, making the pharaoh laugh instead of performing your sacred duty has upset the delicate ecosystem of palace intrigue. The senior concubines, a coven of women who've been here long enough to have favorite assassination methods, watch you like vultures eyeing a limping gazelle. Oh, how thoughtful. Kuz Nefertari's cousin twice removed. Everyone here is somehow related to someone important. She's the unofficial leader of the senior concubines, mainly because she survived 7 poisoning attempts and 2 suspicious crocodile encounters. Someone has sent you rouge, the expensive kind, made with genuine cinnabar. Cinnabar, for those keeping track, is mercury sulfide. It gives a beautiful red color and also slowly drives you insane before your organs fail. But it makes your cheeks look absolutely divine while it's killing you, so that's nice. You've learned enough palace survival skills to be suspicious of anything offered with a smile. How generous. Perhaps you should try it first, since you have more experience with fine cosmetics. Her smile falters slightly. Oh no, I couldn't possibly. It's clearly meant for you. The thing about palace politics is that it operates on rules more complex than hieroglyphic grammar. Every gesture has 17 meanings. Every gift is potentially lethal, and alliances shift faster than desert sand in a windstorm. You're playing a game where the rules change hourly, and the penalty for losing involves creative applications of ASP venom. Your paranoia saves you when you notice mouse droppings near the cosmetics box, except they're too uniform, too perfectly placed. Someone has been testing the contents on rodents. You find their tiny bodies hidden behind a pottery jar, their mouths stained tellingly red. Such a shame, you announce loudly in the common area. I've developed a terrible rash and can't use any cosmetics for a month. The palace physician says it might be contagious. The senior concubines scatter like you've announced you have plague. Skin conditions are social death in a world where your entire value depends on being flawlessly decorative, but they're not done with you. Oh no, palace rivalries don't end with one failed murder attempt. That would be quitting. And these women have dedication that would impress pyramid builders. Next comes the scorpion in your bed. Classic, but effective. Except whoever placed it didn't account for your habit of checking your sleeping mat after that incident, where you found a very confused duck in your room. Nobody ever explained the duck. So you spot the scorpion's tail poking out and use a sandal to flick it onto Nefertari's cousin, twice removed's bed instead. The screaming that night is magnificent. The food poisoning attempts are almost insulting in their lack of creativity. Lotus seeds laced with lotus seeds that are actually different. Toxic lotus seeds. Amateur hour. The wine with enough poppy extract to fell an elephant. Please. You've started making friends with the food tasters, who appreciate someone who actually notices they exist. They're getting desperate, mutters C0ncubine, the only concubine who seems genuinely uninterested in murder. She's survived by being aggressively mediocre, pretty enough to avoid dismissal, plain enough to avoid jealousy. Yesterday, I heard them debating whether ground glass or ground pearls would be harder to detect in face powder. Ground pearls? You raise an eyebrow. That seems economically inefficient. Right. Just push someone down the stairs like a normal person. The politics extend beyond simple murder attempts. There's the faction of the gazelle, supports the great royal wife, the followers of the bee backing the crown prince, and the sisterhood of the sauce boat. Nobody knows what they want, but they're very organized. You're pressured to join all of them, which would require the kind of scheduling skills usually reserved for planning military campaigns. Historians still argue about whether ancient Egyptian harems were really this politically complex, or if we're projecting modern palace intrigue backwards. But when you walk in on a secret meeting, where they're planning to frame you for stealing sacred honey from the temple stores, you figure the academic debate can wait. The breaking point comes when someone puts itching powder in your wig. Not lethal, just cruel. You spend an entire banquet trying not to scratch while the pharaoh discusses tax reform with visiting dignitaries. By the time he gets to grain distribution in the outer gnomes, you're practically vibrating with the effort of not clawing your scalp. Enough. You declare that night. Standing in the middle of the common room, I have an announcement. The senior concubines look up from their various activities: embroidery, jewelry making, mixing suspicious powders. I've been keeping a journal. You lie smoothly. Of every gift, every accident, every conversation. I've hidden copies in 3 different locations. If anything happens to me, they'll be found. You can't write, sneers Nefertari's cousin twice removed. I had the palace scribe help me. You counter. Lovely man, very chatty, especially interested in that thing with the cobra in the bathing pool last month. The silence is beautiful. Nobody knows if you're bluffing, but more importantly, nobody knows which scribe you might have corrupted. There are dozens, and they all gossip worse than fishwives. From that night on, the murder attempts stop. The poison gifts still arrive, but now they come with antidotes and apologetic notes. Thought you might enjoy this purely decorative arsenic. Definitely not for consumption. Please confirm receipt so we know you weren't accidentally exposed. Palace intrigue, you realize, is just middle school with higher stakes and better jewelry. The temple drums start before dawn, which means today's your turn for divine wife duties, a fancy way of saying you get to pretend to be married to a statue while priests run their underground beer empire. You drag yourself from your mat, joints creaking like old papyrus, and stumble toward the house of purification. The other girls selected for today's ceremonies look equally thrilled, their expressions suggesting they'd rather be calculating pyramid angles. Remember, drones the high priestess, a woman whose eyebrows have merged into one disapproving line. You represent the goddess Hathor in her sacred union with Ra. No yawning, no scratching, and definitely no commenting on the smell. The smell, as it turns out, comes from the priest's secret brewery operating in the temple basement. Historians still debate whether Egyptian temples were really centers of commerce, but you can confirm that the Temple of Hathor doubles as the kingdom's most profitable tavern after dark. The sacred beer they're supposed to use for rituals. They're selling it to merchants at a 500% markup and replacing it with date wine that tastes like liquid regret. You're dressed in the ceremonial outfit, a collar of gold and carnelian that weighs approximately as much as a small child, and a linen dress so sheer it makes your usual palace attire look modest. The sistrum you're supposed to shake rhythmically has been blessed so many times it's sticky with old beer. Procession begins, shouts a priest who definitely sampled too much inventory last night. His eyes are redder than the sunrise, and he's swaying slightly. You file into the inner sanctuary where the statue of Hathor waits. She's depicted as a cow, because apparently ancient Egyptian deities didn't believe in subtle symbolism. You're supposed to dance before her, shaking your sistrum and chanting hymns about her sweet milk of divine ecstasy, which sounds significantly less spiritual when you know the priests are running a bootlegging operation 10 feet below. The secret passage to the brewery is hidden behind a relief of Hathor nursing the pharaoh. You discover this when one of the newer priestesses leans too hard during her dance and the wall swings open, revealing stairs down to a room full of fermenting barley and extremely surprised priests. It's a sacred brewing facility, the high priest says quickly, emerging from below with foam in his beard, for divine intoxication purposes. Is that why there's a Nubian merchant down there haggling over wholesale prices, you ask? Because apparently near-death experiences with poison cosmetics have destroyed your self-preservation instincts. The high priest's eye twitches. He's praying, in Nubian. It sounds like commerce, but it's actually very spiritual. The cover-up that follows is magnificent in its audacity. Suddenly, you're all sworn to secrecy about the sacred mysteries of fermentation, which supposedly date back to when Hathor got humanity drunk to stop them from destroying each other. You're each given a blessing of free temple beer for life, which is clearly a bribe, but honestly, after dealing with homicidal concubines, you'll take it. The religious duties get stranger from there. During the festival of drunkenness, yes, that's a real religious holiday. You're required to drink until you pass out, then wake up to the sound of drums to symbolize rebirth. The priests have turned this into a lucrative tourist attraction, charging nobles to participate in authentic spiritual experiences that are basically ancient Egyptian pub crawls with better costumes. "This is sacred wine," the high priest announces, pouring something that smells suspiciously like the bathtub brew from the palace servants' quarters, blessed by Hathor herself. "Hathor must have a strong stomach," mutters another concubine, but she drinks it anyway, because refusing would be blasphemy, and also because it's been a really long week. The most surreal assignment comes when you're chosen to be the earthly avatar of Bastet during the Festival of Cats. This involves sitting very still while hundreds of sacred cats are brought to the temple. The priests insist these cats choose who to bless with their divine presence, but really, they just go to whoever smells most like fish. You've been rubbed with mackerel oil for authenticity. "The goddess speaks through her sacred animals," proclaims a priest, as a mangy tomcat starts aggressively humping your leg. Behold her enthusiasm. 16 cats end up in your lap, not because you're divinely blessed, but because the priests accidentally used fermented fish oil, and now you smell like a seafood restaurant having an identity crisis. You sit there for 3 hours, covered in cats and trying to look spiritual while they fight over who gets to shed on your ceremonial wig. But the real scandal breaks during the Feast of the Valley, when you catch the high priest selling spots in the religious procession to wealthy merchants. For 50 gold pieces, anyone can dress up as a divine ancestor and march through the streets throwing flowers. For 100, they can ride the sacred bark usually reserved for the god's statue. Supply and demand. The priest shrugs when you confront him. The gods understand commerce. Where do you think offerings come from? You're starting to understand why the palace considers temple duty a punishment. Between the drunk priests, the entrepreneurial corruption, and the suspicious stains on every religious garment, it's less divine service and more sacred dysfunction. The final straw comes when you discover they've been watering down the holy oils with chicken fat because it's all lipids anyway. As you stumble back to the palace reeking of rancid poultry and cheap beer, covered in cat hair and disillusioned about organized religion, you realize something important. Everyone in ancient Egypt is running a scam. The priests sell fake blessings. The nobles buy fake divinity. And you pretend it's all deeply meaningful while secretly planning to bathe in vinegar for a week. At least the beer was free. The pregnancy panic starts when your monthly blood doesn't arrive on schedule. And suddenly, every twinge in your abdomen feels like the gods announcing you're carrying the next potential heir to Egypt. In a world where royal bastards either become powerful governors or conveniently disappear, you're not eager to find out which category you'd fall into. "Drink this," says the palace midwife, handing you a cup of barley water that's been peed on by a supposedly pregnant woman. If you vomit, you're with child. You stare at the cup. This is someone else's urine. "Mixed with barley," she adds cheerfully. "Like that makes it better. It's very scientific. The pregnancy hormones react with the grain spirits." Historians still argue about whether ancient Egyptian pregnancy tests actually worked, or if they just made everyone sick enough to think they were pregnant. Based on the smell alone, you're voting for the latter. The contraception options make the pregnancy test look reasonable. Your official briefing on birth control reads like a recipe book written by someone who deeply hates women. Option 1. Crocodile dung mixed with honey inserted into your sacred lotus chamber before intimate activities. The theory is that the alkaline properties create an inhospitable environment for seed. The reality is that you smell like a riverside latrine and no one wants to touch you anyway. Very effective, nods the midwife when you express skepticism. 9 out of 10 concubines swear by it. What happened to the 10th? She's raising twins in the servants' quarters. Option 2 involves pessaries made from dried fish bladders soaked in cedar oil. Yes, you're supposed to put fish organs inside your body and hope for the best. The cedar oil allegedly has spermicidal properties, but mainly it makes you feel like you're hosting a seafood market in your nethers. The acacia gum suppositories sound almost reasonable, until you learn they have to be inserted immediately before intercourse and take 20 minutes to dissolve. Nothing kills the mood quite like asking a living God to wait while your tree sap birth control melts. Just a few more minutes, your divinity. The acacia is still lumpy. But the most terrifying option is the silphium, a plant so effective at preventing pregnancy that the Romans will literally extinct it in a few centuries through overuse. Right now, it's worth more than gold and tastes like someone fermented a sandal in vinegar. You're supposed to drink it as tea once a month, but the side effects include hallucinations, excessive sweating, and temporarily believing you're a migratory bird. I took too much once, confesses another concubine. Spent 3 days convinced I was an ibis, built a nest in the throne room. The pharaoh was not amused. Your pregnancy scare turns out to be a false alarm caused by the stress of dodging assassination attempts and drinking pea barley. But the relief is short-lived when you realize you'll have to keep playing birth control roulette every time the pharaoh remembers you exist. The other girls share their horror stories during the evening baths. One got pregnant despite using every contraceptive method simultaneously and smelling like a fish market that caught fire. Another miscarried after a rival slipped her moldy bread, ergot poisoning being the ancient world's most horrific abortion method. The smart ones get fat, whispers a concubine from Memphis. Eat honey cakes until you're too plump for royal tastes. They reassign you to kitchen duty. What about the ones who want children, you ask? The bathhouse goes quiet. Finally, someone speaks. Royal bastards are like crocodiles, dangerous to create and harder to control. You learn about the babies born to concubines who couldn't afford contraception or whose fish bladders failed. Some are acknowledged and raised as minor royalty, useful for political marriages or governing distant provinces. Others simply vanish. Their mothers reassigned to temples in the desert where the sand swallows questions. The worst part is the fertility treatments for concubines who can't conceive when commanded. These involve sitting over burning herbs that make your eyes water, drinking potions containing powdered mummy, yes, actual human remains, and rubbing your belly with oils blessed by statues of Min, the god of fertility who's always depicted with an aggressive erection. At least the contraceptives might kill you quickly, mutters one girl undergoing fertility treatment. This is slow torture by deceased people and divine phalluses. The conversation is interrupted by screaming from the next room. A concubine has gone into labor, and the midwives descend like vultures who've been to medical school. You're recruited to help, which means holding the poor girl's hand while she crushes your fingers and questions the life choices that led her here. Push, commands the head midwife. Think of the fields flooding. I'm thinking of murdering everyone in this room, the girl screams back. The birth is successful, a girl, which means no succession crisis, but also no guaranteed protection. The mother clutches her daughter with the fierce desperation of someone who knows the palace owns them both now, later. Mixing another batch of crocodile dung contraceptive. You've gotten disturbingly good at the consistency. You make a decision. You'll use every prevention method available, no matter how disgusting. You'll smell like a zoo that serves seafood. You'll drink enough silphium to hallucinate an entire flock of yourself, because in this palace, your womb is just another political battlefield, and the only winning move is not to play. Historians debate whether ancient Egyptian women had any reproductive autonomy. You can confirm they did. It just required creativity, determination, and a strong tolerance for reptile feces. The screaming starts during mathematics lessons, which isn't unusual because ancient Egyptian multiplication involves drawing hundreds of tiny birds and hoping you counted right. But this particular scream has a wet, gurgling quality that makes everyone freeze. Prince Amenemheb, fourth in line to the throne and notorious for his temper, stands over his tutor holding a bronze stylus that's definitely not supposed to be protruding from the man's neck. He said, "I calculated the grain tax wrong," the prince announces calmly, as if this explains everything. Blood pools around the tutor's sandals, seeping into the papyrus scrolls that will never teach anyone about fraction-based accounting again. You're part of the decoration for this lesson. Concubines positioned around the room like very expensive furniture that occasionally fans people. Your job is to look beautiful and pretend you don't exist, which becomes challenging when there's arterial spray on your dress. The other royal children barely glance up from their work. Princess C0ncubine continues practicing her hieratic script. Prince Thutmose picks his nose with the concentration of someone performing sacred rites. This is apparently just Tuesday in the royal schoolroom. "Someone clean this up," Amenemheb orders, sitting back down to his calculations. "And bring a new tutor, one who understands that the royal seed doesn't make mathematical errors." Historians still debate whether ancient Egyptian royalty really believed in their divine infallibility or just used it as an excuse for murder. Based on how Amenemheb is now calmly working out grain distributions while his tutor expires 3 feet away, you're thinking it's both. The succession drama makes the concubine politics look like children's games. Every royal child is technically in line for the throne, which means they're all one suspicious accident away from power. The crown prince, Thutmose, seems safe until he develops a mysterious illness after eating figs that his younger brother definitely didn't touch. He survives but loses most of his hair and the ability to digest anything but barley porridge. Strange how illness strikes the virtuous, muses Amenemheb during dinner, while Thutmose glares at him over a bowl of gruel. You're assigned to serve at these family meals, which are tense affairs where everyone tests their food on slaves and conversations involve subtle death threats disguised as religious philosophy. The Queen Mother presides over it all like a cobra watching mice fight, occasionally making comments that somehow make everything worse. Amenemheb shows such passion for accuracy, she observes after the tutor incident, though perhaps less lethal teaching methods might preserve our educational staff. "If they're worthy, the gods will protect them," he replies, stabbing his roasted duck with unnecessary force. The royal children's education is a bizarre mix of divine propaganda and practical brutality. They learn that they're descended from gods, infallible and eternal, while simultaneously being taught 17 different ways to poison rivals and make it look like natural causes. Their history lessons involve memorizing which ancestors murdered, which relatives, and why it was totally justified. Your participation in their daily routines reveals just how damaged these divine children are. Princess C0ncubine collects teeth, not her own, other people's, and keeps them in little alabaster jars labeled with the former owner's name and method of extraction. Prince Amenemheb practices his stern pharaoh face in mirrors, but really just looks constipated. The younger princes play a game called Succession, where they act out elaborate assassination scenarios with their wooden soldiers. "You can't poison my wine," insists 8-year-old Prince Sayaman. "I have a food taster." "I poisoned the food taster first," counters his brother. "With slower poison, so he lives long enough to taste your wine. Then you both die." "That's brilliant," C0ncubine claps his hands. "When I'm pharaoh, you can be my chief assassin. If you live that long," his brother adds cheerfully. "The worst part is babysitting duty." Yes, concubines are expected to watch royal children, presumably because if you can survive the adult palace politics, you can handle murderous toddlers. You're paired with Princess Nefertiti, age 6, who communicates primarily through biting and has already figured out that servants can't bite back. "Tell me a story," she demands, latching onto your arm with her teeth. "Once upon a time." You begin through gritted teeth. "There was a little princess who didn't bite people and therefore lived to see 7. She considers this, then bites harder. The children's games are miniature versions of adult court intrigue. They form alliances, betray each other, and wage tiny wars over honeycakes and toy soldiers. You watch 6-year-olds orchestrate complex schemes to frame each other for breaking pottery, thinking this explains so much about adult palace life. The breaking point comes during a lotus viewing party, where Prince Amenemheb pushes his sister into the pool because she laughed at his poem about the majesty of his own eyebrows. She can't swim. Neither can most nobles, because swimming is for commoners who work on the river. You jump in to save her, ruining your makeup and wig, but keeping the king's daughter from drowning. You touched a royal person without permission, Amenemheb notes as you drag his sputtering sister to safety. That's punishable by death. So is letting her drown, you point out, coughing up lotus petals and pond scum. He considers this logic. Fair, but you're still wet and disgusting. Go away. As you squelch back to your quarters, pondering how you became a lifeguard for homicidal children, you realize these kids are Egypt's future. These bite-happy, murder-plotting, emotionally stunted divine beings will one day make decisions affecting millions. Historians wonder why so many pharaohs seemed insane. You could write them a papyrus. They started that way. The rehearsal for the Opet festival begins at dawn, and you're already regretting every life choice that led to this moment. The choreographer, a man who moves like he's personally offended by the existence of joints, claps his hands in a rhythm that suggests either artistic vision or severe digestive distress. "Ladies," he shrieks, his voice hitting notes that make the sacred ibises flee. You are embodying the celestial dance of Nut across the heavens. Every movement must speak of divine grace, sacred beauty, cosmic sensuality. What he fails to mention is that you'll be performing this cosmic sensuality completely naked except for a belt of golden cowrie shells that jingle with every step. Oh, and body paint. Lots of body paint that supposedly tells the story of creation, but mostly just makes you look like someone sneezed a rainbow on you. The paint is mixed with honey and tree resin, explains the assistant choreographer, slathering blue paste across your shoulders. It catches the sunlight beautifully and only causes moderate skin irritation. The dance itself requires flexibility that human spines weren't designed for. You're supposed to bend backward until your head touches your heels, symbolizing the sky goddess arching over the earth. Several girls, have already pulled muscles attempting this move, and one dislocated something that made a sound like papyrus tearing. Feel the divinity, the choreographer screams as you practice. You are not mortal women, you are celestial bodies. I feel like a celestial body that's about to vomit, mutters the girl next to you, who's gone green under her gold paint. The real issue isn't the nudity. After months of transparent palace clothes, modesty is a distant memory. It's the audience. Thousands of people line the processional route from Karnak to Luxor, and they've been drinking since before dawn. Egyptian festivals are basically religious excuses for public intoxication, and drunk crowds aren't known for their respectful appreciation of sacred dance. You practice the routine until your muscles scream in languages that haven't been invented yet. The lotus blooming at dawn move requires spreading your legs at an angle that makes you understand why lotus flowers don't have nervous systems. The celestial swan ascending is just a fancy name for jumping, while trying not to let everything bounce too obviously. Remember, the choreographer lectures during a water break. You're telling the story of creation through movement. When you shimmy, you're representing the primordial waters of Nun. When you undulate, you're the serpent of chaos being tamed by Ra. When I collapse from heat exhaustion, what am I representing then? Asks one girl. The death of art. He snaps back. The day of the festival arrives with temperatures that could bake bread on stone. Your body paint starts melting before the procession even begins, creating interesting color combinations as the blue sky runs into the golden sun across your stomach. The cowrie belt has been tightened to the point where breathing is optional, and the honey in the paint is attracting flies with disturbing enthusiasm. The procession starts at the temple of Karnak, where you join hundreds of other dancers, musicians, and priests who look about as thrilled as sacrificial cattle. The pharaoh's golden bark leads the way, carried by priests who are definitely questioning their career choices. You and the other concubine dancers follow, trying to maintain cosmic grace while navigating streets littered with pottery shards and suspicious puddles. The crowd reaction is mixed. Some throw flowers and shout blessings, or others throw different things and shout suggestions that are definitely not in the choreography. One enterprising merchant follows the procession selling blessed festival water that smells distinctly alcoholic. "Nice cosmos," yells a clearly drunk nobleman, gesturing at your painted chest. "Very round, very divine." You maintain your celestial expression while internally composing a letter to your parents about how their merchant daughter is now jiggling through Thebes while strangers critique her theology. The worst moment comes when you have to perform the sacred union of earth and sky routine in the temple courtyard. This involves partner work with male dancers who are wearing even less than you, just gold paint on their divine aspects. Your partner is a priest of Min who takes his fertility god representation very seriously and keeps waggling his eyebrows suggestively. "We're embodying divine procreation," he whispers during a particularly intimate lift. "Perhaps we should rehearse privately later. Perhaps you should embody shutting up before I embody kicking you in your sacred aspects." You hiss back, maintaining your beatific smile. The dance reaches its climax, pun unfortunately intended, as the sun sets. You're exhausted, covered in smeared paint and other people's sweat, and pretty sure you've pulled muscles in places you didn't know had muscles. But the crowd is cheering, the pharaoh looks pleased, and nobody's died from exposure or honeyfly attacks. As you stumble back to the palace, leaving a trail of blue and gold paint like an artistic slug, you realize you've just danced naked in front of half of Thebes. Your mother would be mortified. Your father would pretend you died. But honestly, After surviving poison cosmetics and murderous children, public nudity seems almost quaint. Same time next year? Asked the choreographer, already planning new ways to torture human anatomy. You consider it. The pay is good. The paint washes off eventually, and it beats sitting over crocodile dung fumes. Sure, but next time, can we use paint that doesn't attract insects? Where's the divinity in that? He asks, genuinely puzzled. Historians still debate the religious significance of Opet festival dances. Having performed one, you can confirm the only thing sacred about it was how miraculously nobody got arrested. The headache starts during morning prayers, a dull throb behind your eyes that makes the priest's droning sound like someone's hammering copper inside your skull. By noon, you're seeing two of everything, which would be amusing if one of those things wasn't the palace physician approaching with a drill. Trepanation, he announces cheerfully, holding up a bronze tool that looks like it was designed by someone who really hated skulls. We'll simply bore a small hole to release the evil spirits causing your pain. You blink at him, hoping desperately that the double vision is making this worse than it actually is. You want to drill into my head? Just a tiny hole. He demonstrates the spinning motion with disturbing enthusiasm. Many patients survive the procedure. Well, some patients. Actually, would you like to make an offering to Thoth first? Historians still debate whether ancient Egyptian medicine was advanced for its time or just creative torture with good record keeping. Based on the physician's eager expression and the suspicious stains on his drill, you're leaning toward the latter. What about less invasive options? You suggest weakly. He strokes his chin thoughtfully. We could try the standard treatment, honey suppositories, naturally, for a headache. Everything connects to the anus eventually, he says with the confidence of someone who's never actually traced those connections. The ancient texts are very clear. Headaches, heart problems, fertility issues, all treated through the blessed rear passage. You're starting to understand why palace life expectancy is so low. The compromise involves rubbing your temples with a paste made from roasted ibis beaks and lotus oil, while chanting a spell that sounds like someone sneezing in hieroglyphics. When that fails to work, shocking nobody, they move on to bloodletting via leeches that have been purified in beer. The leeches draw out the corrupt humours, the physician explains. Placing the slimy creatures on your neck, see how eagerly they feed. That's the evil leaving your body. That's blood leaving my body, you correct. Watching the leeches swell like tiny black grapes. Same thing. He waves dismissively. Blood, evil, excess humidity, it's all connected through the divine channels. The medical papyri he consults read like fever dreams transcribed by committee. Treatment for demons in the belly involves swallowing a live mouse. Broken bones are set with splints made from palm ribs and positive thinking. One cure for blindness requires rubbing the eyes with a mixture of pig's eye, antimony, and honey, because apparently the way to fix vision problems is to put more eyes on the problem. Your headache worsens as they try increasingly desperate treatments. Ground mummy powder mixed with wine. The preserved flesh of the anciently dead has healing properties. Crocodile fat massaged into your scalp. Their thick skulls resist pain. A poultice of cow brain applied to your forehead, like treats like. I'm starting to think the headache is the least of my problems. You mutter as they prepare something involving ostrich eggs and copper filings. The physician takes offense. I'll have you know I studied at the House of Life in Memphis. I've memorized all 42 books of Thoth. I once successfully treated a man who'd been bitten by a possibly rabid monkey. What happened to him? He died, but not from the monkey bite. Completely unrelated crocodile incident. This is not reassuring. The other concubines share their own medical horror stories during evening bath time. One girl had her broken finger healed by tying a mouse to it, the logic being that mice bones heal quickly, so proximity would encourage her bones to do the same. Another was treated for wandering womb by having aromatic substances burned between her legs to lure it back to position. "At least you haven't had the beetle treatment," says a girl from Nubia, shuddering. "They put live scarab beetles on your chest for heart problems. The tickling is supposed to stimulate cardiac function. Did it work? I fainted from horror, and they declared me cured because my heart rate went down." The palace medical emergency protocols are equally terrifying. For poisoning, they induce vomiting with a combination of salt water and pigeon droppings. For wounds, they pack them with moldy bread, which actually contains penicillin, making it accidentally effective and probably the only sound medical practice in the whole place. For fertility issues, they test your urine by pouring it on wheat and barley seeds, which somehow indicates pregnancy based on which grain sprouts first. Your headache reaches crescendo when they decide to try the skull percussion method. This involves tapping on your head with different size mallets, while listening for hollow sounds indicating spirit possession. You endure about 3 taps before grabbing the smallest mallet and demonstrating percussion on the physician's knee. "Ow, you can't strike a physician. I'm protected by Imhotep. And I'm protected by common sense. No more drilling, leeching, or hammering." He huffs off to complain to the chief physician, who prescribes bed rest and wine, probably the most sensible treatment available. As you lie in your chamber, head still pounding, but at least undisturbed by medical intervention, you make a mental note. Never get seriously sick in ancient Egypt. The headache eventually fades on its own, probably because your body got tired of competing with the treatment attempts. The physician claims credit, insisting his holistic approach of throwing everything at the problem until you threaten violence was clearly effective. "Medicine is as much art as science," he declares proudly. "It's definitely not science," you mutter, but quietly, because you might need his help again someday, and you'd prefer to avoid the drill. Historians celebrate ancient Egyptian medical knowledge. Having experienced it firsthand, you can confirm they knew a lot about the human body, mostly creative ways to make it suffer in the name of healing. The Nubian prince arrives during the inundation season, when the Nile runs high, and apparently so do diplomatic hormones. You're selected for cultural exchange duties because you're one of the few concubines who hasn't yet caused an international incident. Though given the way the prince keeps licking his lips while staring at your feet, that's about to change. Prince Kashta has specific preferences. The chief eunuch explains delicately. His last visit resulted in 3 diplomatic marriages and 1 declaration of war. We're hoping for something in between. The prince himself is actually quite handsome, with skin like polished ebony and muscles that suggest he wrestles lions for fun. He'd be perfect if he didn't keep making intense eye contact with your ankles and breathing heavily whenever you shift position. "Your feet," he says in accented Egyptian. "They are like gazelles leaping across moonlit sand." You blink. "Thank you. May I touch them?" The diplomatic attaché coughs loudly. Perhaps His Highness would enjoy some wine first, some figs, a nice tour of the armory. But Prince Kashta only has eyes for your supposedly gazelle-like feet. He produces a small vial from his robes. "In my kingdom, we have sacred oils for the blessing of beautiful feet. I would be honored to apply them." This is how you end up in the surreal position of having Nubian royalty massaging your feet, while two scribes take notes for the official diplomatic record. He hums what might be a religious hymn, or possibly a love song to toes, occasionally pausing to compliment your exquisite arch and divine heel structure. Your calluses, he breathes reverently. They speak of a life lived with purpose. I walk a lot? You offer, unsure how to respond to foot-based poetry. The other concubines assigned to the delegation fare no better. Prince Kashta's retinue includes his cousin who collects belly-button lint for spiritual purposes, an advisor who insists everyone he meets must smell his armpits to establish dominance, and a general who communicates exclusively through interpretive dance. Is this normal for Nubian culture? You whisper to the translator. He shrugs. Every kingdom has its customs. Last month, the Hittite ambassador brought his wife, who turned out to be a very well-dressed goat. The formal banquet is an exercise in diplomatic creativity. Prince Kashta insists on sitting at your feet, literally, feeding you dates while composing spontaneous odes to your ankles. His cousin has cornered a terrified serving girl and is explaining his lint taxonomy system. The dancing general is having an entire military strategy discussion through increasingly aggressive gyrations. Your toe rings, the prince sighs during the fish course. They shine like stars reflected in the sacred waters of the first cataract. That's very specific. You manage, trying to eat while someone fondles your feet. The Egyptian nobles watch with expressions ranging from horror to amusement. The pharaoh himself seems torn between ordering executions and commissioning a comedy play about the evening. The queen has already downed 3 cups of wine and is taking bets on which diplomat will crack first. The situation escalates when Prince Kashta produces an elaborate foot-washing basin made of gold and lapis lazuli. In my culture, he announces, washing the feet of beauty is the highest honor. In our culture, mutters the chief eunuch, keeping your hands off the royal concubines is the best way to keep your head. But diplomatic immunity is a powerful thing, and soon you're awkwardly balanced on one foot, while a foreign prince tenderly washes your toes and his interpretive dance general performs what might be either a rain dance or a declaration of war in the background. I must confess, Prince Kashta says, working soap between your toes with disturbing thoroughness. I have never seen such perfectly proportioned phalanges. You've learned many things in the palace, but proper responses to toe-based compliments wasn't covered in training. Your Highness is too kind. I wish to compose an epic about your instep. The translator looks like he's questioning every life choice that led to translating foot fetish poetry. He says, your feet are very nice. I gathered that. The breaking point comes when the prince produces a small portrait of your feet that he apparently commissioned from memory after your first meeting. It's actually quite well done, if you ignore the fact that it's a loving oil painting of your toes. I wish to negotiate for marriage, he declares. I offer 40 cattle, 20 lengths of gold cloth, and my finest war elephant. For the concubine? Asked the pharaoh, suddenly interested. For her feet. The rest of her may visit on weekends. Even by palace standards. This is weird. The scribes have given up trying to record everything and are now just drawing confused hieroglyphs. The queen is openly laughing. The link-collecting cousin has started a bidding war for someone's naval treasures. You're saved by the dancing general, who chooses this moment to perform what everyone agrees must be a challenge to single combat. In the ensuing chaos, as guards try to determine if rhythmic hip thrusts constitute an act of war, you manage to slip away, later, soaking your over-pampered feet in regular water without an audience. You reflect on the evening. You've been painted like a goddess, danced naked through Thebes, survived poison attempts, and been medically assaulted by allegedly trained physicians. But somehow, having foreign royalty write poetry about your toes is the thing that makes you question reality. "How did it go?" asked another concubine. "I think I'm engaged to a foot." "Just the foot?" He was very specific. The Nubian delegation leaves 3 days later, but not before Prince Kashta commissions a golden ankle bracelet with "To my beloved's divine metatarsals" engraved in 3 languages. You wear it because refusing would cause an international incident, but mostly because it's the most expensive thing anyone's ever given you, even if it is essentially toe-themed jewelry. Historians debate the complexities of ancient diplomatic relations. Having been romantically pursued by someone who wanted to marry your feet, you can confirm diplomacy has always been deeply, deeply weird. The figs arrive on a silver platter, glistening with honey and looking innocent enough to make you immediately suspicious. Your food taster, a girl named Merit, who's developed an almost supernatural ability to detect poison, picks one up with the resignation of someone who knows their job might kill them, but at least the pay is good. "Wait," you say, noticing how the servant who delivered them won't make eye contact. "Who sent these?" "A great admirer of your beauty," he mumbles, already backing toward the door. Merit sniffs the fig carefully. She survived 18 months in this job, which makes her practically a veteran. Most food tasters last about as long as morning dew in the desert. She touches the fig to her lips, pauses, then shakes her head. "Tastes like almonds," she announces. But figs shouldn't taste like almonds. Almonds mean bitter almonds, which means cyanide, which means someone's getting creative with their murder attempts again. You and Merit exchange the weary look of women who've made checking for poison as routine as fixing their makeup. "Tuesday already?" You sigh. "I thought we'd agreed to keep assassination attempts to weekends." Merit carefully wraps the poisoned figs in linen. "Should I send them back?" "No, save them. I have a birthday gift to send to Nefertari's cousin twice removed next month." The food tasting system in the palace is elaborate and horrifying. Every concubine of any importance has at least 1 taster, sometimes 3 for special occasions. They sample everything: food, wine, cosmetics, perfume, even the water for your bath, since someone once tried to poison a rival through skin absorption. It was innovative. You had to give them that. Merit has developed a system. She organizes your meals by threat level: probably safe, bread, basic beer, moderate risk, anything with sauce, and definitely trying to kill you, elaborate dishes with multiple ingredients where poison could hide. She's compiled a mental encyclopedia of toxins. Hemlock makes the throat burn. Arsenic tastes metallic. Snake venom has a distinctive tang. "The secret," she explains while cataloguing the poisoned figs, "is to build up immunity slowly. I've been taking tiny doses of common poisons for months, or isn't that dangerous? Less dangerous than not being immune when someone gets creative." She's not wrong. The palace poisoning attempts have become increasingly elaborate since straightforward arsenic stopped working. Last week, someone tried powdered glass in face powder. The week before that, contact poison on harp strings. There was even an attempt involving trained wasps, though that failed when the wasps decided they preferred the honeycakes to their intended target. Your daily routine now includes watching Merit perform her grim ballet. She tastes your morning beer with the concentration of a wine connoisseur, She dabs your perfume on her wrist and waits for rashes. She even tests your chair cushions after someone discovered that certain plants, when dried and stuffed into pillows, release toxic spores. I'm thinking of writing a manual, Merit muses during lunch, having successfully identified benign date cakes. A taster's guide to not dying. Chapter 1. If it smells like flowers but isn't flowers, don't eat it. The worst part is social dining. Every banquet becomes a strategic game where you watch your taster sample each dish while maintaining pleasant conversation. Nothing ruins dinner party flow quite like your food taster convulsing mid-appetizer. Is she well? A visiting noble asks, as Merit doubles over after trying the soup. She's just very enthusiastic about lentils. You lie smoothly, mentally noting to avoid anything from that particular kitchen. Merit recovers. It was just mild stomach poison, barely lethal, and continues her duty with the determination of someone who's too stubborn to die. She's developed relationships with various kitchen staff, building a network of informants who warn her about suspicious additions to recipes. The sauce chef's assistant has a gambling debt, she reports. Watch out for anything with cream sauce this week. The poisoning attempts aren't always aimed at you. Sometimes you're just collateral damage in larger schemes. The night 3 concubines died from tainted wine meant for the crown prince. You and Merit sat up until dawn, testing and retesting everything in your quarters. Maybe I should become a scribe, Merit says, examining a suspicious melon for needle marks. Less chance of death by fruit, but worse pay. You point out. True, and I've grown fond of you. You're one of the few who actually notices I exist. It's a sobering reminder. Most nobles treat their tasters like furniture that occasionally screams. You've made a point of actually knowing Merit's name, her family, farmers from the Delta, her dreams, surviving long enough to save for her own farm. It makes watching her risk her life daily that much harder. The morning the poison figs arrive turns out to be part of a larger plot. By evening, 2 concubines are dead from poisoned wine. One is paralyzed from toxic massage oil, and someone's pet monkey has expired from eating treated dates. The palace investigates with all the efficiency of a drunk hippo, eventually blaming kitchen mishaps and executing a random servant. Same time tomorrow, Merit asked that night, organizing her testing supplies. If we're both still alive. You agree, she grins, dark humor being the only humor that survives in palace service. I've lasted this long. Besides, tomorrow's menu is barley porridge. Hard to hide poison in porridge. Challenge accepted, comes a voice from the corridor, followed by giggles. You and Merit exchange looks. She sighs and makes a note. Test porridge extra carefully. Being a food taster in ancient Egypt requires a unique combination of bravery, paranoia, and scientific curiosity. Merit has all 3, plus an increasingly comprehensive knowledge of toxicology that would terrify actual physicians. If I survive to retirement, she says, I'm writing that manual, Merit's Guide to Identifying 37 Different Poisons by Taste Alone. If you survive to retirement, I'll pay for the papyrus myself. You promise. You both know the odds. But in a palace where breakfast might kill you, optimism is just another survival strategy. You turn 25 on a Tuesday, though nobody bothers to mark the occasion because in palace years, you're basically dead. The morning begins with a younger concubine, barely 16, fresh-faced and stupidly optimistic, accidentally sitting in your preferred spot at breakfast. The fact that you even have a preferred spot marks you as a veteran, like a battle-scarred crocodile too tough to relocate. "Oh," she gasps, jumping up. "I didn't know this was your place, Auntie." Auntie. The word hits like a poorly aimed trebuchet. In the real world, 25 is young adulthood. In the palace, where new girls arrive monthly like fresh fruit shipments, you're an archaeological artifact that somehow hasn't been catalogued yet. The mistress of concubines pulls you aside after morning prayers. She's developed a twitch in her left eye that gets worse whenever she has to discuss transitions, which is palace speak for "you're too old to be decorative. Now what?" "We need to discuss your future," she says, which ranks among the top 5 most terrifying sentences in palace vocabulary. Right after, "the pharaoh requires your presence," and "there's something moving in your bed." The options for aging concubines are limited and universally depressing. Option 1. Become a palace mother, which means you supervise younger concubines while slowly pickling in your own bitterness. You've seen palace mothers, women in their 30s who look 50, faces frozen in permanent disapproval, living vicariously through girls who'll replace them soon enough. "You'd be good at instruction," the mistress suggests. "You know all the dances, the proper cosmetics, the politics. I know 17 ways to test for poison and how to make contraceptives from fish bladders." You counter. "Is that really what we want to pass on?" Option 2. Marry whoever will take you. The palace maintains a list of minor officials and merchants willing to wed former concubines. It's basically a clearance sale for slightly used decorative items. Most of these men are either desperate for status, peculiarly interested in experienced women, or hiding something worse than a foot fetish. There's a tax collector in Memphis. The mistress reads from her papyrus. Recently widowed, only 48, most of his teeth. Most? Well, the important ones. He can still chew. Option 3. Join a temple as a priestess. This sounds spiritual until you remember your previous temple experience with the beer bootlegging priests. Plus, most temples require purity, which is hilarious considering you've spent years as professional palace entertainment. The Temple of Hathor always needs dancers, the mistress notes. Sacred prostitution with extra steps. Such crude language. It's divine service through interpretive movement. It's shaking my cowrie belt for offerings instead of salary. The worst option, which nobody mentions directly, but everyone knows about, is simply disappearing. Concubines who become too old, too difficult, or too knowledgeable sometimes take permanent sabbaticals to remote estates that definitely exist and aren't just euphemisms for shallow graves in the desert. You see the fear in other aging concubines' eyes. Women who once strutted through palace halls now shuffle quietly, trying to become invisible. They volunteer for the worst assignments: inventory duty, mending ceremonial costumes, testing new depilatory recipes, anything to prove they're still useful. 25 isn't old, insists EZ, who claims to be 27 but is probably pushing 32. In farming villages, we'd just be hitting our prime. We're not in farming villages, you remind her. We're decorative objects in a place that prefers its decorations fresh. The younger concubines treat you with a mixture of pity and horror, like you're a cautionary tale with a pulse. They whisper about your crow's feet. You have one, maybe 2 fine lines. Your sagging breasts, still perkier than most thanks to those horrible chest-binding exercises. Your general decay. You needed 3 whole minutes to fully wake up this morning. Will we really become like them? You overhear one asking another. Not if we're smart. I plan to snag a nobleman by 22. Sweet summer children. You are going to educate them about the realities of palace marriages. But why ruin their dreams? They'll learn soon enough that most nobles collect wives like pottery, displayed when fashionable, stored when not, broken and discarded without much thought. The mistress gives you a month to decide your fate, a month to choose between bitter supervision, desperate marriage, questionable priesthood, or mysterious disappearance. You spend it doing what you've always done, surviving one day at a time, dodging poison attempts that have become almost nostalgically routine, pretending your knees don't crack when you dance. Maybe I'll start a school. You tell Merit one evening. Teaching young women practical skills, like identifying arsenic and calculating pyramid taxes. Who would pay for that? She asks, ever practical. Parents who actually want their daughters to survive past 25. But you both know the truth. The palace doesn't release its decorations easily. You've seen too much, know too many secrets, can identify too many poisons by smell alone. You're a walking encyclopedia of scandal and assassination attempts, and that kind of knowledge doesn't retire peacefully. The headache returns, the same one from months ago, but now you recognize it as stress rather than spirits requiring skull drilling. You're 25, ancient by concubine standards, facing a future that ranges from bleak to bleaker. Your joints ache from years of unnatural dancing positions. Your skin bears scars from countless beauty treatments. Your mind holds memories that would traumatize a war veteran. Happy birthday to me, you mutter, raising a cup of definitely not poison beer in mock celebration. Tomorrow you'll make a decision. Tonight, you're just another aging ornament in a palace full of prettier, younger, more naive replacements. But you're alive, which in this place counts as a victory worth celebrating, even if you're celebrating alone. Historians romanticize the lives of ancient Egyptian concubines, having aged out of the profession at the ripe old age of 25. You can confirm it's less romantic adventure and more decorative object with an expiration date. The crocodile hunt is announced with great fanfare, because apparently the pharaoh has decided that what his midlife crisis really needs is to wrestle prehistoric death machines in the Nile. You're selected as part of the inspirational entertainment, which means you get to stand on a boat in see-through linen while grown men poke angry reptiles with sticks. It's a sacred hunt, the master of ceremonies explains, as servants load spears that look woefully inadequate for dinosaur-adjacent combat. Pharaoh will demonstrate his dominion over the chaos of the waters. Pharaoh can't climb stairs without wheezing, you mutter to Merit, who's coming along because apparently even crocodile hunts require poison testing. The opportunity presents itself like a gift from Isis herself. A dangerous river expedition where accidents happen, bodies disappear, and crocodiles conveniently destroy evidence. It's either the worst possible situation for an aging concubine or the perfect escape plan. You've been weighing your retirement options for weeks, and they all end with you either bitter, married to someone's grandfather, or mysteriously vanished. Why not vanish on your own terms? You spend the night before preparing. Your few valuables, mostly bribes from not reporting various palace scandals, get sewn into a waterproof pouch. Merit helps, because Merit has helped with everything from poison testing to contraceptive mixing. And if anyone deserves to know your plan, it's the woman who's literally risked death to keep you alive. You could come with me, you offer, watching her stitch gold pieces into leather. She shakes her head. I've got 6 months until I can afford my farm. Besides, someone needs to tell everyone you died heroically saving the pharaoh from a crocodile. I'm planning to fall off the boat and disappear. Yes, but in my version. You wrestle the crocodile first. Very dramatic. Maybe you sing a death song. The morning of the hunt dawns hot and muggy, perfect weather for terrible decisions. The royal fleet consists of papyrus boats that look about as sturdy as the economic promises in tax scrolls. You're dressed in white linen so sheer it's basically theoretical, with gold jewelry that will definitely weigh you down if you accidentally fall overboard. The pharaoh arrives carried on a litter, already sweating through his false beard. He's wearing enough protective amulets to stock a temple gift shop, which really undermines the whole fearless god-king image. His spear is ceremonial gold, probably couldn't pierce warm butter, but it photographs well for the official records. Today, we vanquish the enemies of Ma'at, he declares, nearly dropping the spear. The priests chant, the drummers drum. Your fellow concubines assume poses of decorative terror, and the crocodiles, disturbed from their morning nap, surface with expressions suggesting they're about to vanquish someone's leg. The hunt begins with all the grace of a hippopotamus ballet. Boats crash into each other, spears miss their targets and occasionally hit other boats. One priest falls in immediately and has to be fished out while screaming about purification rituals. The crocodiles seem more confused than threatened, probably wondering why their river suddenly contains so many noisy snacks. You position yourself near the edge of your boat, ostensibly to better inspire the hunters with your decorative terror. In reality, you're calculating current speeds and noting which river bends could hide a swimming escapee. You've practiced holding your breath in the palace baths, though bathtubs don't usually contain apex predators. The moment comes when a particularly large crocodile surfaces near the pharaoh's boat. Everyone screams. The pharaoh waves his golden spear ineffectively. His guards rush to protect him, creating exactly the kind of chaos a disappearing concubine needs. You take a deep breath, clutch your waterproof pouch, and let yourself fall backward with a theatrical scream. The water is shockingly cold and tastes like millennia of dubious things dying in it. Your jewelry tries to drag you down, but you've practiced this too. Unhooking the heavier pieces as you sink, above, you hear muffled shouting. Someone yells your name, Merit, bless her dramatic soul, wails about crocodiles and blood in the water. You swim underwater, lungs burning, toward a papyrus thicket you'd noted earlier. Breaking the surface among the reeds, you risk a glance back. The royal fleet is in chaos. Someone's harpooned the pharaoh's ceremonial sunshade. 2 boats have collided. The large crocodile is casually swimming away, probably disgusted by the whole affair. Nobody's looking for a maybe-dead concubine when there's this much incompetence to manage. You float downstream, hidden among papyrus and water lilies, listening to the hunt grow distant. Occasionally, you hear Merit's voice, still performing grief with admirable commitment. By the time you reach the river bend you'd marked as your exit point, the sun is high and the royal fleet is nowhere in sight. Dragging yourself onto the bank, you look like something the river coughed up after reconsidering. Your white linen is now brown linen. Your carefully applied makeup has migrated to interesting new locations. Something that might be a leech or might be river mud is attached to your thigh. But you're free. For the first time in years, nobody's watching you, judging you, trying to poison you, or comparing you to younger models. You're just a wet woman on a riverbank, and it's the most beautiful thing you've ever been. You peel off the remaining jewelry, goodbye, ankle bracelet from the foot-obsessed prince, and change into the common clothes you'd hidden in your pouch. Brown, rough-spun linen, the kind merchants' daughters wear, the kind you used to wear before someone decided you were decorative enough to sell. The walk to the nearest village takes hours. Your feet, soft from years of palace floors, protest every stone, But with each step away from the palace, you feel years falling off. Not the cosmetic years they were so concerned about, but the weight of constant performance, permanent paranoia, and pervasive perfuming. By evening, you're just another traveler seeking lodging. Your story is simple. Widow heading north to family. Your gold gets you a room and passage on a grain boat leaving tomorrow. Nobody looks twice at your face. Finding no divine beauty or cosmic sensuality, just sun damage and exhaustion. That night, lying on a straw mattress that's somehow more comfortable than silk cushions, you laugh, really laugh. Not the calculated giggle of a concubine or the bitter chuckle of a palace survivor. Tomorrow you'll wake up nobody special in a world that doesn't care about your toe proportions or poisoning immunity. You've died and been reborn. And all it took was one poorly organized crocodile hunt and a river full of reptiles with better sense than royalty. The grain boat smells like dried sweat and barley dust. But after years of suffocating incense and poisonous perfumes, it's the most honest thing you've ever inhaled. You're 3 days north of Thebes now, watching the banks slide by with the detachment of someone who's already died once and found it surprisingly liberating. Your fellow passengers are merchants, farmers, and one very loud man who claims to be a diplomat, but is obviously smuggling something that clinks. Nobody asks your story beyond the widow tale, and you don't volunteer details. In the palace, silence meant secrets or stupidity. Out here, it's just considered good manners. Where you headed? Asks a woman with twin boys who've spent the entire journey trying to fall overboard. North, you say, which is both true and useless as information goes. Got family there? Something like that. Family. The word sits strange on your tongue. Your parents sold you for 3 oxen. Good oxen, granted, but still livestock. Your siblings probably think you're living in luxury, dripping gold and honey, not knowing you spent a decade dodging death by figs and dancing naked for drunk nobles. You could find them, show up with your boat passage money and river salvage dignity. But what would you say? Hi, I'm back from being royal furniture. How's the farm? The boat stops at a market town where the biggest scandal is overpriced onions. You wander the stalls, marveling at conversations that don't involve assassination subtext. A vendor argues about beer prices without anyone checking for hemlock. Children run past without calculating succession possibilities. It's mundane and magnificent. You rent a room above a bakery with the last of your gold, then face a problem you never considered while planning your dramatic death. What now? You can't dance? Well, you can, but not without triggering flashbacks of painted nipples and cosmic sensuality. You can't be decorative. That ship has sailed and sunk. Your main skills involve identifying poisons, mixing contraceptives, and knowing 17 different ways to prostrate yourself. I need work. You tell the baker, a woman whose arm suggests she kneads dough and occasionally wrestles cattle. Can you bake? I can learn. Can you wake before dawn? I haven't slept past dawn in a decade. Can you keep your mouth shut about customers' business? You almost laugh, after years of palace secrets that could topple dynasties. Local gossip about who's sleeping with whose husband seems quaint. Absolutely. The work is hard. Your palace soft hands blister immediately. Your back screams from hunching over ovens instead of arching in celestial dance poses. Flour gets everywhere. Hair, lungs, places flour has no business being. But there's something healing about creating things people actually need instead of being a thing people temporarily want. You learn bread the way you once learned poisons, methodically, obsessively. the difference between regular and feast day loaves, how humidity changes rising times, and which customers complain about everything and which ones slip you extra for thick crusts. It's chemistry without the risk of death, though you do check the flour for ground glass out of habit. Your past life intrudes sometimes. When a customer mentions visiting Thebes, you tense. When someone jokes about palace life, you smile too tightly. When the baker's daughter plays with makeup, you have to stop yourself from warning her about lead poisoning. But mostly, you sink into anonymity like a hot bath that doesn't require poison testing. Weeks become months. Your hands roughen properly. Your hair, no longer subjected to daily chemical warfare, grows in healthier. You develop arm muscles from kneading and a genuine smile from not constantly calculating survival odds. Regular customers know you as the widow who makes good honey cakes, which beats Lotus Bud number 7 by several pyramids. One evening, counting the day's earnings, the baker mentions, "You're different from when you started." Your stomach drops. Different how? Happier. Less like you're waiting for the walls to attack. You realize she's right. Somewhere between the 5th flour explosion and the 100th loaf, you stopped checking shadows for assassins. Your shoulders dropped from permanent defensive position. You started sleeping without one eye open, though you still keep a knife under your pillow because some habits die harder than fake concubines. I had a difficult marriage, you offer, which isn't entirely a lie if you consider being wed to paranoia and mortal terror. Men, she snorts, with the solidarity of someone who's never had to worry about their husband being a living god with a fake beard and real power to execute people for giggling. The season turns. You watch floods and harvests like a normal person, not calculating which palace celebrations you'll have to dance at. News filters through. The pharaoh's grand crocodile hunt where a concubine died heroically saving his divine presence. Merit really did sell that story. You're described as beautiful and loyal to the end, which is hilarious considering you were neither and very much not ended. Sometimes you dream about the palace, not nightmares. Those stopped after month 2 of bread-making therapy. But strange. Disconnected memories. The taste of crocodile dung facial masks. The weight of golden chains. The faces of other concubines who didn't have boats to fall off. You wake up grateful for flour dust and ordinary problems like weevils in the grain supply. A year passes. You're no longer the widow from nowhere but part of the town's fabric. You have opinions about proper oven temperatures and the new tax collector's toupee. Children know you'll sneak them day-old pastries. You've even started a small side business teaching young women practical skills, accounting, basic literacy. And yes, how to identify common poisons because that knowledge shouldn't die with palace walls. Why do we need to know about arsenic? Asks one student. You probably don't. You admit. But isn't it better to recognize it and never need to than need to and not recognize it? They think you're slightly odd but harmlessly so. The kind of odd that comes from being widowed young, not from surviving a decade as an animate decoration in a homicidal palace. You'll take it. On the anniversary of your death, you bake honey cakes with no hemlock and wine bread with no poppy extract. You're 30 now by your count. Ancient for a concubine, but perfectly reasonable for a baker. Your joints still ache from all those unnatural positions, but now they also ache from honest work. Your face shows lines from laughter and sun, not just stress and lead poisoning. That night, you raise a cup of definitely not poisoned beer to Merit, to the crocodile that enabled your escape, to the palace that taught you to survive anything by trying to kill you constantly. Then you drink deep and go to bed early because tomorrow's bread won't bake itself. And you've got a life to live that doesn't require checking for scorpions first. Some historians claim palace concubines lived glamorous lives of luxury and intrigue. Having been won and escaped, you can confirm the only luxury was surviving. And the real intrigue is how anyone lasted past 25. But you did more than last. You left, lived, and learned to make excellent bread. That's your kind of happily ever after. As you settle into your narrow bed above the bakery, the sounds of palace life fade like incense smoke on river wind. No more golden chains weighing down your every step. No more calculating which smile might save your life today. Just flour beneath your fingernails and the promise of dawn bringing nothing more dangerous than hungry customers. Your eyes grow heavy as you think of tomorrow's batch of barley loaves. How you'll shape them with hands that once trembled holding poisoned wine. The year has softened your nightmares into something almost like nostalgia. You survived the unsurvivable, escaped the inescapable, and found freedom in the simple act of creating rather than decorating. In the palace, they're probably training new girls now, teaching them to walk like gazelles and smile like goddesses. Let them. You've learned the secret they'll discover too late or never. True power isn't in beauty or proximity to gods, but in the ability to walk away, to choose your own reflection, to wake each morning knowing your worth isn't measured in someone else's desire. The night wraps around you like a blanket unstained by perfume or fear. Somewhere, the Nile flows past palace walls where girls dance for approval and women disappear like morning mist. But here, in this small room that smells of yeast and possibility, you're exactly where you belong. Author of your own story, baker of your own bread, finally and completely free. Sleep comes gently, carrying dreams of golden sunlight on wheat fields instead of golden chains on painted skin. And in the morning, like every morning since your rebirth from the river, you'll rise to greet a world that asks nothing more from you than what you choose to give. Close your eyes now. Let the ancient rhythms of river and grain carry you toward peaceful sleep. You've earned your rest, your freedom, your small and perfect life. Dream now of bread rising and sun warming honest earth, of days measured in loaves rather than survival, of all the mornings yet to come when you'll wake as yourself alone, no longer decorated, no longer displayed, but beautifully, blessedly, ordinarily alive.